Okay, here's a few concepts to help you get the most out of your time working with the pads in MMA and Muay Thai. The pads can be a really effective training tool, but I think there's a few things you can do to make it more effective still. Okay, so generally when we start in our pad work, there's a couple of things I'm looking for. One is I call this calibration. Okay, so I want to get a sense of distance with my partner. A lot of the time people start pads and they'll be stood way too close. Immediately I can tell now as Pia hits, especially with straight shots, that the distance is not right. Okay, so if Pia's throwing a jab and it's connecting the pad here, the arm's nowhere near extension, we need to recalibrate this distance a little bit. So I might like make my athlete step back a little bit by pushing and try and find that measure when they do throw the jab, but we're getting more extension. It's the same idea with the backhand. Okay, so if we're too close, this is not optimal for improving those kind of neural pathways to help. We want to be extending the shots out from there. Okay, and then the next part of calibration is also the accuracy of the punch. If you look at most hand pads, Thai pads, they'll have some kind of thing in the middle, like a dot or something like this. And what we're always trying to encourage our athlete to do is to hit the center of that dot. Okay, it's not so much about just cracking the pad hard, because you've got to think, if you look at that compared to someone's face, like hitting the top of the pad is going to be like hitting the forehead, where you're going to risk breaking your hand. Hitting the middle of the pad is obviously the chin and the nose. So sometimes my partner starts throwing and it might feel like that shot was a little bit high, and as the pad holder you can tell this, right? You can feel this. So I might say a little bit lower on the pad. That's better. Yeah, and they'll feel that. There'll be a sound, there'll be a feedback when we're hitting that accurate, and it's the same with the other punches as well. Yeah, so whatever we're throwing, we're going there. We're trying to get right into the center of the pad, and this is very tactile. It's something that both you and the person who's hitting the pad can feel, but it's something I want to be pushing them on throughout the round of pads. Okay, so calibration is another part of that. Another thing I like to do with the pads is use them as a visual stimulus. So I think there's a time and a place for coach kind of calling out combinations to the athlete. You can go like 1-2 hook, that kind of thing. But my preferred way of working, and I think the way that's more realistic to actually fighting or sparring, is when athletes are just seeing an opening and hitting. Okay, so I'm using the pads more like a visual stimulus. So rather than me going jab as I hold the pad up for the jab, I just show the jab there. Okay, show the backhand. So I'm getting the athlete used to reacting to when they see certain cues. And you can obviously add complexity to this as much as you want. You can start working shots down on the bodies. We've got high lows, cues. You can hold pads up in different orders. So rather than me going 1-2, I might go for 2-1. So the athlete then knows that they're throwing the backhand first, followed by the lead. I might show this from a double. Yeah. And in that way, without saying a word, I can get movement work out of the pads, a bit more like you would do in sparring. You don't often like spar with someone and they tell you what punch to hit with. They go right hand, left hook. It's more like you see that opening and you go from there. The third kind of concept we like to use is, on pads, there's a lot of emphasis on attack, but we also want to make sure that our athletes are defensively responsible. Okay, so this means that I want them to be thinking about what they're doing after they've hit. Okay, so maybe Pia throws a jab, and then I might just test position. Okay, so that could be me shooting a pad back or something like that. It could even be me stepping and forcing them to move. Okay, but the job's not done after the combination. I want to see some kind of defensive movement after that, and I'm encouraging the athlete as much as possible to hit, and then they're proactively moving, forcing me to move, or hit, proactively moving. So I'd like for me to be constantly moving side to side like this. Okay, because if the athlete's just reacting to me, okay, where I go, you're just getting into this habit of like following with the dance. But if they're proactive, so you say Pia hits a jab and then she's going to make a little angle either way. She's not going to tell me which one. Here, See how she forces my adjustment. This is exactly the same thing as you should be doing when you're sparring, okay? You should be hitting and you should be ready to move to force your partner to adjust. Yeah, she forces me to move, okay? Good. So it's just a few things there to help get the most out of your time on the pads, okay? Again, pad work can be a great tool, but we can get more out of it by thinking about it a little bit more in a kind of a live sense.